and I met what seemed to be this perfect woman. She liked the Chicago Cubs. She was a Democrat. She lived in the suburbs. She had all the things that I thought were perfect that could be my soulmate, but there was no chemistry.
So it's pretty common that opposites attract, when you think, right? So what happens when opposites, like a giver is attracted to a taker, or in our world, a narcissist is attracted to a codependent?
The thesis of my book, The Human Magnet Syndrome, talks about that chemistry comes from the matching of opposites. If we think of a dancing couple, there has to be a follower and there has to be a leader. And each will search for the right person that feels familiar so they can dance. So the opposite, caretaker, the one that sacrifices their own need for love, respect, and care, always is going to feel comfortable with the person that needs all the love, respect, and care. And each person is going to feel like, oh my gosh, I found my soulmate. But really, they're gravitating towards someone who feels familiar, that makes them feel comfortable and safe in a relationship. They come together like magnets, human magnets.
And that familiarity is something that we have to learn to inspect on our own and be self-reflective about. Because if someone feels familiar, it could be on one side or the other, right? Yeah. You really have to wake up to that, because in the early stages of relationship, it's about the evolutionary imperative, not looking at the behavior traits. Like we were in that days of chemicals and joy and everything. So we're about reproducing and mating and all of that kind of thing. So we have to learn to step back and say, this feels familiar, but is it in a good way or not a good way? Which is why I believe in premarital counseling or pre-commitment counseling.
I think that there is a really important point here. There's something that I call automatic intimacy that a lot of people participate in now. Everybody loves everybody, but it's very similar to having someone stand very close to you, and you have to step back to really see their features. And so there is the let's step back place before the full form of intimacy can be truly healthy and understood.
And that is really hard to battle, and that is to be conscious in a relationship. Because if we were born in to parents, one of whom was a narcissist, and all we know is that we feel comfortable and safe taking care of someone, or if we were born to narcissists and all we know as a child to know that to feel safe is to take care of ourselves, that we unconsciously are magnetically are drawn to the opposite because it's familiar, it's what we know how to do it. It's like when I was on Match.com and I met what seemed to be this perfect woman. She liked the Chicago Cubs. She was a Democrat. She lived in the suburbs. She had all the things that I thought were perfect that could be my soulmate, but there was no chemistry. And what I later would find out and would write about is that we were too similar in our orientations and relationships. We both were caretakers. And that's the power of opposites on the unconscious attraction to each other.
Well, now let me add a little bit of biology.
Yes.
I think we've evolved 4 very broad styles of thinking and behaving linked with the brain systems for dopamine, serotonin, testosterone, and estrogen. And I created a questionnaire for Match.com that was on their site, chemistry.com, and that's been taken by 14 million people in 40 countries. And my express thing was, do opposites attract or does similarity attract? And as it turns out, those people who are very expressive of the traits linked with the dopamine system, being novelty-seeking, risk-taking, curious, creative, spontaneous, energetic, they go for people like themselves. People who are very expressive of the serotonin system, they tend to be traditional, conventional, follow the rules, respect authority, need loyalty, meticulous, orderly. They go for people like self. Traditional goes for traditional, experimental goes for experimental. But the other 2 types, those expressive of the testosterone system traits and those expressive of the estrogen system, they go for their opposite. And I think that's actually what you're talking about. In the normal world, people are very expressive of the testosterone system, analytical, logical, direct, decisive, tough-minded, and they go for, which can lead to the narcissism, and they go for the high estrogen, who are caretaking, people skills, verbal skills, intuitive, nurturing, and they could lead to the codependent. And so I have found that naturally the high testosterone and the estrogen go for their opposite. And that's, you can see where that could then escalate into the narcissist and the codependent.
Interesting.
I also think that codependents and narcissists can come, as you've said, from families that are narcissistically wounded, parents who are narcissistically wounded, and that we often are attracted unconsciously as creatures, our wild wisdom, to someone who has a similar wound. We know it, we feel it, and we feel they will never hurt us the way that they were hurt. And so I can trust him or her. But we have different ways of expressing that wound, and thus a narcissist and someone who is codependent can find each other. And we often confuse familiar with comfort. I know this. It must be comfortable and comforting. No, it ain't.
So it sounds like it's sort of normal for some personality types to be attracted to their opposite and then not for others. And if you're in a relationship with someone that you're uncomfortable with or you're worried that there's something that's not quite working, get another set of eyes on it. It'll probably help you figure it out.